The Elder Scrolls Online has a huge problem. What? Being a pay pig turns out is not exactly the greatest deal. Every single expansion, every single update being some form of money extortion turns out isn't exactly the greatest game ever. Man, who would have ever wondered? Is that Daedra and Aedra and all the other gods now being canonically trans? Not joking about that if you did not know. It's true. All of them being like that is not cool enough? Oh my.
Every year I dump a few hundred hours into the Elder Scrolls Online, whether it comes to trying out new quests, stories, or zones, testing new systems, and just updating my favorite builds. It's one of my favorite games of all time, but every year I'm also faced with some of the same problems with this game, whether it's lack of difficulty or build diversity, bloated itemization, or just failure to
When they allowed everyone to use any class's abilities, yeah, build diversity did kind of go out the window, didn't it?
innovate. These are the same problems, more or less, that have kept this game from being the best of the best, at least in the current MMO space. I know that ESO is not perfect, and that's okay, but
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. Modern World of Warcraft is unironically 5 times better than Elder Scrolls Online, and if you know me, then you know that Modern World of Warcraft is beyond abysmal, okay? The crafting needs a separate guide, the systems are not explained, and the stuff that doesn't need hand-holding literally puts a leash around your neck because, oh, the stuff that anyone can figure out now, that's the hard one. The lore stories are abysmal. The lore itself is absolutely dead. Chris Metzen is back and he's gonna save it. And guess what? He's not. And that is still unironically 273 trillion times better than Elder Scrolls Online. The absolute irony of that, okay? Because at least it's fun to play your class in World of Warcraft retail.
this year, oh boy, ESO has some major new problems that it's added to the list. And the worst part is this new problem is one that the developers added themselves to the game without realizing.
Based, it's not like anyone's gonna stop playing this game who's already playing. Okay? The reality of Elder Scrolls Online is very simple. A lot of the Elder Scrolls fans are quite nice in the fact that they will admit, yeah, it's a really bad game, but I play it because there's nothing really else. Like, what do you want me to do? Go play Fallout 76? Of course not. That's just torture. So they're going to continue playing this game, and at this point, it doesn't matter what they update, how much stuff they break, how much more pay-to-win things they get, or whatever. Elder Scrolls Online is this close to charging people, money for time spent on loading screens and steps taken. This is how far we have come.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Hack, and it's time for our annual look back at the Elder Scrolls Online, and specifically, what are the core issues that still need to be addressed that are holding the game back? In past years, I've talked about some pretty serious issues which still haven't gotten fixed, by the way. Most recently,
Obviously.
itemization and the item sets, which by my count were over 500 plus item sets deep in the game now, with only a few dozen of those ever really being used. That's still a big issue, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in this video, in fact. But recently, the Elder Scrolls Online
Look at this. Does this seem fun?
introduced something new called subclassing, and subclassing has now taken my #1 spot for the biggest thing that ESO needs to fix as soon as possible, because it's literally made some players quit the game entirely. But what really is subclassing, and what's the biggest problem with it? Well, subclassing in the Elder Scrolls Online is one of those many ideas that sounds great on paper, but also can cause chaos and
Yeah. Okay. So this is how it works. Any class that you pick actually can play any other class and use any other abilities. There are some limitations, but who honestly cares? That effectively makes it that there's no classes, and yeah, that's kind of dull and boring. And if you're doing endgame content, the reality is everyone looks exactly the same. So there you go.
disorder when you actually bring it into a live service game. Subclassing, in my opinion, is just an extension of what ESO has been trying to do with other systems like its item sets or mythics or scribing over the past several years, and that's twofold. Number one is their bringing in new methods to simulate the idea of increased player choice when it comes to crafting builds.
I like how he said this, simulate the idea of player choice. Not actually give real player choice, but simulate it. I love that.
Player identities. And number 2 is they're recycling some.
I love when the game I'm playing treats me as a drooling moron that cannot figure how to move your character. I love it. Oh my god. Those are my favorite games.
Existing content or systems in ways that give the appearance of a fully fleshed out game system without the full complexity or depth that a complete game system in an MMO should have. Subclassing seems like the next iteration of that same problem. It's a lot more choices, which on the surface sounds good, but the problem is that in reality, only a few of those many choices actually performs well. What this translates to in terms of player experience is you have way too many options now, which greatly overwhelms new players, while at the same time, really only presenting a handful of actual good choices for endgame, which also underwhelms the experienced players. Subclassing also creates issues with class identity, which is an even bigger problem for some people. But before we get there, let's go back to when subclassing was introduced in April of 2025.
This is some Anarchy Online tier combat, by the way, Jesus.
This was an exciting, if not somewhat scary, moment for ESO. Players were definitely excited at the potential to mix and match certain class skills, basically any way that they wanted to. With subclassing, you could now combine, let's say, a Templar with Necromancer skills and make a Dark Templar type of build, and that was a cool idea for sure. Many players were also skeptical that subclassing would simply encourage players to just mix in the best skills only, like Arcanist's Fate Carver Beam, combined with the Nightblade's increased critical chance in the Assassination skill line, to make a straight-up DPS machine that could trivialize endgame encounters. And of course, wouldn't you know it, players were basically right. Once subclassing was released, we did see some cool off-meta builds that encouraged role-playing or new builds.
There is one thing that's really cool about this, though. It is the fact that the best stuff is probably not yet found, okay? So someone's at some point gonna find the actual broken stuff, and it's gonna be amazing. Well, for a day or two.
Themes like my Druid build, which mixed Warden, Dragon Knight, and Sorcerer abilities into one cohesive theme, but more often than not, we saw players simply combining the 3 best DPS skill lines to make the mathematically best DPS build, or the 3 best tank skill lines to make the best tank build.
Yep, this is the problem, but this is a problem that is normal, okay? It is a problem that people do it. People want to deal a lot of damage. People don't want to be a burden to their teams. People want to actually perform well and do things and be strong when they play the game. So naturally, people are going to gravitate towards the strongest stuff. So naturally, the majority of the game is literally going to be people who just Google strongest ESO build, blah, 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 and check what's up. That's it.
Get the idea. So for most, what subclassing really did was it showcased the 5 to 6 skill lines, which were actually really good in ESO, while also highlighting the really bad skill lines, which were now completely ignored by the majority of players. I don't want to name.
Now, you know what's funny? Technically, this should not be really that much of a problem. The developers could just fix the game, but we're talking about Elder Scrolls Online. The developers are not fixing anything, okay? We're literally talking about Bethesda work quality right here, okay? Maybe the weakest skill line is gonna get a buff in 5 years, and it's gonna somehow make it even worse. That's the best you can expect.
Names here, but Dragon Knight's Draconic Power skill line, I'm pretty much looking at you. But if pigeonholing players into even less class meta build options and highlighting the worst performing class skill lines wasn't bad enough, subclassing brought with it a completely new problem, one that I think the ESO dev team was unprepared for. Class identity in the Elder...
Let's actually look, does this affect the game, okay? ESO, Steam... TV. Let's see. Previously, there were 15k players online. The last time we checked this was a couple of months ago, I think. So, let's just see. Oh my lord! It's actually 8k players currently. Is that like, oh, the peak is 11k. Bro, bruh, potato. Holy moly, this is actually really bad. Let me shit, let me shit. Oh my, this is actually a huge player dip. Look at this, look at this. Oh my lord, bro. Okay, so here's the maximum. Okay, for 40. The hell did it get 49? Is this bugged? How can the peak be almost 50k if the peak is here and that's 43k? That's confusing. In any case, look at this. This is where it started. 3 months ago, blah blah blah. ESO followed solo. It was 6 months ago. When did they do it? I think it was probably here because it's a huge increase. Was it? No, it was before that. ESO endless archive. No, it was after the endless archive. I'm assuming it's like here or here. And now you can see it. 12k 24 player peak. Holy macaroni. Like, look at this. A year back, the average was almost 20k at some points. And now let's look at 3 months ago. Yeah, this is bad. Also, by the way, the botting situation seems to be insane. You know how you can tell the botting situation because look at the. Oh no, actually, wait. What does it look like? Oh, this isn't just not. No, it is. It's the bot. It's bots. What the hell? What the hell was that? That's so. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, yeah, no, it's fine. Okay, and the botting situation is also absolutely abysmal, it seems like. Because look at the peaks. The peaks are pretty bad. The high notes and the low notes don't have a severe difference. And when your highs and lows don't really have a severe difference, that means there's botting issues. No, wait, are these the graphs being bad? It's kind of, nah, that's not that bad. When the graph goes the same and shows the average, then it gets a little bit wonky. But no, maybe botting is not such a prevalent thing. Okay, a difference of 7 to 12, 13k or 6 to 11k. That's actually normal. That's actually not that bad. So the botting situation should be not that bad. I looked at this and the average seemed a little bit. Where did I look? Yet? No. I looked somewhere and the graph instantaneously looked like botted because when there's no difference between highs and lows, you know your game is botted to hell and back. In any case, the player drop is actually insane. Holy. ESO was doing so good, by the way, for such a long time at their 15k peak. That was not bad, especially in a game that's blatantly considered pay to win.
Scrolls Online, a class-based MMO, was now completely dead with the arrival of subclassing. But how did that really happen? Well, ESO has always struggled with class identity since the beginning of the game, really. The cause of this goes back to ESO's philosophy.
The cause of this is, you can see it right here. This is called the skill bot. It has one active skill on it, and that's pretty much it. Have fun.
Philosophy of play as you want. Once the devs began to truly embrace this concept, it meant that every class needed similar skills and passives in order to solve the same problems, to basically let every class be a tank or a healer or a DPS, whatever you wanted to do. I don't think it was a bad concept.
By the way, this is such a non-issue, honestly, because you know how other games do this? They make a class that doesn't have X or struggles with X, and then they make a fucking class that can help the other class with the thing that they struggle. And that's how you make a pretty fun gameplay.
Concept, but in reality, there are only so many ways that our characters could do the basics, like heal or deal damage, and so every class basically got those same skills, essentially just with different visual effects. So at the end of the day, there wasn't a lot that made each class different than how they would look visually casting those types of abilities. That said, throughout the years, ESO has actually done a better job with class identity. When they introduced the Necromancer class, for example, it came with entirely new mechanics like corpse generation, corpse management, which led to a new gameplay experience, but that was
Literally stolen a ballad from Hearthstone. I'm not even kidding, by the way.
class identity. They also did something similar with the Arcanist class when it was released, adding the crux building and spender mechanics, and there it was again, some unique class identity. But I think ESO really lost the thread when it came to this idea a few years ago when it introduced class sets. Now, to me, class sets by name alone should have been something that really amped up class identity for the game, and major classes matter in the Elder Scrolls Online, but ultimately, class sets were a pretty big disappointment. Most of these class sets, unfortunately, were uninspired and did nothing really to amplify your class identity, but the entire concept of class sets was and is.
Dude, I can't understand how some games, by the way, ruin class sets. It's such an easy concept. Make class set, change something about how your character functions. When you press this button, not only that happens, but something else happens. Okay, and then you do something else with it. That's it. That's what you do. It's so simple, so easy. And most games are like, the class set now gives you 5% critical stack. I hate you. I hate you so much.
Still pointless in my opinion, because no one who understands the game will ever want to give up an entire 5-piece set bonus for that tiny bit of extra class power or utility. The big problem here is that class sets, which should be class and build defining, actually make you weaker in ESO when compared to even some basic crafted sets. So the whole thing is a giant missed opportunity, again, in my opinion. And this goes back to my earlier point about most sets in ESO.
This is not even a missed opportunity. This is worse. This is actually so much worse and dreadful, but he hasn't caught on. This is the fact that when they did the sweeping change about how class works, that everyone can be everyone now, yay, modern day stuff, they were just too lazy to change the game around it, because you do something that massive, you actually need to change the game to accommodate it, and they just didn't. They left everything as it is, and that's pretty much it. Obviously, you can't remove classes and just not change anything else about the game. It just doesn't work like that. So they just did the big thing because they thought, oh, big thing, people are gonna want to see big thing and experience it. Yay, woo, wah. And no.
Which we have hundreds of at this point, being a waste of time. Players at most can only wear basically 3 sets on their character at once, and so players will always gravitate to the top 15 to 20 sets in the entire game based on whatever combat role that they're doing. Rather than keep adding more and more sets to the game, which ESO has not stopped doing, they should focus on new itemization options like 2, 3, or even 1-piece sets to mix things up a little bit, or even add new gear slots to characters, which would add more build options without saturating the game with even more useless 5-piece sets. Imagine if those class sets, for example, instead of requiring full 5 pieces,
this looks so unbelievably boring,
simply were a 1-piece bonus, maybe even with a new gear slot included, so you didn't have to change your current build or use a weaker set.
I mean, the irony that I played Season of Discovery and I say that this looks boring is not lost on me, so, you know, at least I'm being honest.
To take on your class bonus, but you could actually amplify your class by adding to it with some more specific purpose. It's too late for that now, obviously, but that would have been a much better way to improve class identity, in my opinion. But subclassing really did destroy class identity even further for the simple reason that your class now doesn't matter. I mean, yes, class still determines what class set you can equip, again, useless, or which class scripts you can use with scribing, but that's a very small impact overall. Again, what most players have done, for good or bad, is just look at the numbers and decided which class skill lines offer the most DPS and have chosen those for their build.
Obviously.
So your Nightblade build is now a Nightblade, Arcanist, Templar hybrid, or whatever the current meta is. Oh, and it's the same build that every other DPS player in your trial group is running because it's mathematically the best combination for DPS. But the thing is that before subclassing, we still had meta builds, of course, but you also had some reasons to diversify due to things like unique class passives, and many people played their favorite class because they liked the way it played, and it was still close enough to the meta or optimal build that you could make it work in a large majority of content.
I wondered how fast the game is gonna die. I mean, the developers actually see it, and currently it's dying, and it's actually dying kind of fast. Again, the last time I talked about this game, not even a year ago at this point, it had 15k players. You need to understand that that's half your player base gone, and you need to understand if your game is giant, losing half your player base is bad, obviously, but there's at least some there's at least some defense that you can give to it. But when your player base is already small and it's literally the most dedicated people left, when you lose half of the most dedicated people playing your game, that's dead. That is really, really, really bad. There's nothing good you can honestly say about it. Again, the last people playing the game are going to be the most dedicated. And now you do an update that literally makes half of them just be like, nope, I'm out, sorry. This is too much. Dude, that is horrible. Because when dedicated players leave, yeah, they're going to come back when things get better. But a lot of them don't. A lot of them don't, because dedicated players have been from a lot of them have been from the start, and then they get slowly burnt out. They gave the game the biggest shot they could. They were the most patient. They were the people that hoped the most and waited the longest. And then you do something that literally just yeets 50% them out the window. A lot of these people are not coming back. Elder Scrolls Online is probably dead for good. It probably has no way to claw back into relevancy, especially considering they're not gonna revert this change. Because reverting this class change doesn't make sense. Think about it. What are you gonna do? You're gonna revert the class change and suddenly you're gonna get those 50% players back? Well, then the 50% that left and like the change are gonna leave. So you're not actually gaining anything, you're just pissing more people off. You know? That's bad. That's not gonna work out real good. Oh boy. Elder Scrolls, I don't think they need to do something else. They need to do something else, and that something else is not gonna get the old players to come back. Some of them, a small portion, probably will, but most of them won't. Most of them just literally won't. And whatever they do needs to be kind of big and impactful. And unless it's actually balancing the game so every class technically actually, is usable or whatever, it's not happening, obviously. That is a change as big as that is never going to happen. So there's nothing they can do to save it. ESO is on an absolute 100% downward spiral until it's going to get closed because there's literally not enough people left standing and playing. It's over.
But now the new issue that we have with subclassing is playing your build as it was before, aka a pure class build, is now vastly underpowered compared to these more optimal subclassing builds. And that's what's really bothering a lot of ESO players right now. They feel forced to use subclassing because pure class builds...
And you know why, by the way, the subclassing thing can never go away? Because in ESO, you have a lot of things that are literally like plus 20% damage. So it's effectively, you can't change that. You will never outperform someone who has two things that literally just say plus multiplicative 20% damage plus multiplicative 20% more, can't even speak properly, more damage. While you have none of that, you will never outperform them. That's the best part. And obviously, people who are using the meta are gonna mistreat the people who aren't using the meta because, I mean, it just makes sense that people don't wanna take people along with them that are just dead weight and can't do anything. It's pretty bad.
perform so much lower, especially when it comes to dealing damage. Unfortunately, there's really no way around that, at least in the current state of the game. There's no way that pure class builds can compete now with subclassing builds that have the optimal class skills, and especially optimized class passives. Passives are a huge part of this as well.
Told you.
This is what I believe the devs missed completely when it comes to subclassing. Specifically, that players liked that last little bit of class identity that they had, and now subclassing has forced them to dump that concept completely. So if that's the problem, what is the fix? Well, obviously it's too late to nerf subclassing. All the devs can do now, realistically, is buff the players that want to play with a full class setup, a pure class build. And honestly, I think that would be kind of cool. I mean, just in terms of lore, it makes sense that someone who has completely focused their studies and their training on one single class would be more effective at using those abilities and should be stronger in combat. A build that uses all three of their innate class skill lines is essentially a master of those class abilities. Why not give those builds some type of buff for doing that? Also, when you speak to the subclassing trainer in-game and you accept the quest for subclassing, you have to end up learning about all the classes and their fighting styles essentially, so I think this will also be a really good opportunity to insert some new quest lines into the game to be a Nightblade master or a Templar master or whatever. So not only could players who do want to be just a Nightblade or just a
Yeah. I don't know if that's gonna happen. Hey, that's that's a thing. What was this channel again? Oh yeah, Hack the Minotaur. We have seen a couple of his videos. Pretty good. Anyway, bye.